Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome to your 9 a.m. gentle yoga class. We're going to start in a seated position, so that can be cross-legged or however you're comfortable being seated on the ground. You can always put a block or a blanket underneath you to make this more comfortable since we'll sit for a few minutes. So find your seated pose. And once you're comfortably seated, we're just going to start bringing some movement into the neck and shoulders. We'll take a few gentle shoulder rolls, rolling the shoulders back and then forward again. Shrug your shoulders up to your ears really tight and then release them. One more time, scrunch them up and then let them drop down. Reach your fingertips to either side of you down towards the mat. They may or may not touch the mat. And then drop your right ear to your right shoulder. Just letting the weight of your head and gravity create space in the left side of your neck and shoulder. At the same time that your ear is reaching towards your shoulders are dropping down away from the ears. And take a few breaths here. And bring your head back up to center and drop your left ear towards your left shoulder. Actively reaching your fingertips down towards the mat to bring your shoulders down away from the ears. And let your head float back up to center. Shake out your arms, roll out your shoulders one more time if you need to. And we'll take a gentle, easy twist. Nothing too crazy yet, but if you want to move anything out from under you that you're sitting on, you can do so. And reach your right fingertips right behind you, center of your back on the mat, using those fingertips and that arm as a guide for your spine to keep you sitting nice and tall. And then your left fingertips come to your right knee. And then after you sit up nice and tall, you can start to bring your gaze over your right shoulder. And your twist may not look very big, but check in with these sensations that you feel. Find the threshold where it feels good, not painful. And let the breath guide you in this twist as well. Every inhale, you're thinking about lengthening the spine, sitting up tall. And with every exhale, maybe you drop into the twist with that exhale. But let the breath do the work of getting you into the twist. And then switch sides. Your left fingertips come behind you, right hand to left knee, Sit up tall. Inhale. And then exhale, gaze over your left shoulder. One more breath here before you return to center. And we'll make our way into child's pose. You can either rock forward on your knees or you can swing your legs over to the side. But bring your knees wide to the edge of your mat. Your big toes come to touch. Send your hips back to your heels and slide your hands forward. Your forehead can come down to the ground or rest on a block or a blanket if you have one handy. And take a moment in your child's pose to check in with your body. How does this feel in your hips and your low back? How does it feel in your shoulders and your arms? Child's pose is supposed to be a resting pose, but sometimes it can feel very extreme in certain areas of the body. So listen to your body. Ease up a bit if there's an area of pain. Make it a resting pose for yourself. And then bring your awareness to your breath. How's your breathing this morning? Are you taking light, shallow breaths? Is there something keeping you from taking full, deep inhales and exhales? If there is, that's okay. Most of us don't come to our yoga mats first thing in the morning and automatically pop into perfect Ujjayi breath. But sometimes bringing your awareness to it can ease you into more even, more intentional breath. And from your child's pose, we'll come up to a tabletop with your shoulders stacked over your wrists, hips over knees. Your knees are hip width apart. And we're going to start to bring some movement into the spine with some cat-cows. As you inhale, drop your belly, lift your tailbone, and lift your gaze so that you're arching your back, but see if you can bring your shoulders away from the ears as you do so. And then exhale, round your spine like a Halloween cat, really pressing your heart up through your back towards the ceiling, and release your head and neck so that you're not holding tension there. Come back to cow. Take a nice breath in. Exhale, round your spine to cat. One more. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And take whatever organic movements feel good. You might want to snake side to side or hinge back and forth. And just getting that spine warmed up. And from your tabletop, we'll move into thread the needle. If you have shoulder issues, you might want to have some props handy to place under your shoulder or skip this altogether. But if you're tight through the back of the shoulders, this will be a good one for you. So shift your weight into your left palm, spread your fingers wide. Inhale your right arm up overhead. And then as you exhale, slide that hand under your left armpit, bringing your shoulder all the way down towards the mat. Now, this is where you can place something underneath if it doesn't feel good for you to release your shoulder and your cheek all the way down. And then you have the option to slide that left hand forward if you wish. If you've extended your left arm, bring the hand back under your shoulder. Press weight in it so that you can lift your right arm back up to the ceiling once again and release it down to the mat so that we can set up for thread the needle on the other side. Shift your weight into your right palm. Inhale your left arm up. Exhale, slide it through underneath that armpit. Find your pose on this side. Option to slide your right hand forward. This might change how this pose feels in your side body, having that hand forward versus right under your shoulder. So find the pose that works for you. When you feel even and balanced here, you can bring your right hand back under your shoulder, press weight into it, lift your left arm up, set it back down, coming to your tabletop position once again. And from your tabletop, We're going to bring our right foot between our hands. So you can just step that foot right between. If it doesn't quite reach, you can scooch it up. You do want to make sure that your knee is stacked over your ankle to protect your knee joint. You don't want any of this business because that can be pretty hard on it. So stack the joints. And when you're ready, we're going to rise on up to a kneeling crescent. And take a minute to check out your hips. For a lot of us, the left hip can pull back and the right hip can pull forward. That's pretty natural. Think about drawing that right hip into the socket and pointing that left hip bone straight ahead towards the front of your mat. And you can keep your back toe tucked for stability, or you can release the top of the foot to the mat, whichever one is more comfortable. You can also place something soft like a blanket under that back knee. Once you've set up your kneeling crescent, lift your arms up overhead. We're going to take a little mini back bend with cactus arms. So bend your elbows and bring your gaze upwards. And then inhale up again and bring your hands down to heart center. And then we'll take a twist, a little bit bigger than our last twist, but again, let your breath guide you without wrenching your spine. We're going to open up our arms towards our right side. So your left arm comes forward, right arm comes back. You're twisting towards your front leg. There's a little bit of balancing here. Take one more breath. Exhale and come back to center. Take a little back bend. Back up. This time open up to the other side for a little counter twist. Starting to open up your hips a little bit. Back up to center. And bring your hands down, framing your front foot. Send your front foot back. And we'll switch sides. This time the left foot comes forward between your hands. Make sure your knee is stacked over your ankle. When you're ready, rise on up. Decide if you want to keep those back toes tucked or release the top of the foot down. And again, think about drawing your left hip into the socket and your right hip shining forward. So your hips should be square, they should be level. So this is just to get you to that point if you have a tendency to open up. Once your hips are squared to the front of the mat, bring your arms up overhead. Take a little back bend. Inhale back up. And then you're going to twist towards your left leg this time. So your left arm comes back, your right arm comes forward. Come back to center. Arms up overhead. Mini back bend. Back up. And this time take your counter stretch to the other side. You can feel the hips beginning to open. And back to center. And release the hands down. Send the front foot back so you're in a tabletop. We're going to move into our first downward facing dog for the day. So I usually move my hands one handprint forward on the mat to give myself the space. Tuck your back toes. You're going to lift your knees, lift your hips, and pedal out your down dog. So start by straightening one leg and then the other, especially if you do have tight hamstrings. And ideally, you want the weight evenly distributed between your hands and your feet. So you don't want to be so far forward that it's like a push-up or so far back that there's no weight in your hands. So see if you can reach a happy medium. Melt your heart towards your thighs and lift your hips so that you're creating a long straight line from your wrists to your shoulders to your hips. And it's okay if your knees bend a little bit. It's okay if your heels aren't touching the ground, but your heels are reaching towards the ground. And take a breath here. Inhale through your nose. Exhale a big sigh out of your mouth. And then on your inhale, we're going to baby step our feet between our hands, coming into a forward fold. So your feet can be toes touching with your heels slightly apart, or your feet can be hip width apart, and let everything hang loose. Your arms can sway side to side, or you can rest pinkies in your elbows. You can shake your head yes, shake your head no, shake your head yes again, so that you know your head and neck are completely relaxed. And I usually recommend keeping a little bit of a bend in your knee here so that your knees aren't locked out. Just keep them flexible. And we'll come to standing, but we're going to move very slowly. We're going to roll up one vertebra at a time, stacking each one on top of the last. And you might need to engage your core just a teensy weensy bit to support your spine as you come up. But see if you can keep that relaxation in your head and neck and even in your arms until they come up. Your head is the very last thing to roll up, and then shine your palms forward so that your shoulders slide down and back away from your ears. Root down through your feet. Find out where your weight is. Is your weight shifted back into your heels or forward into the balls of your feet? Find the happy medium. Maybe lift your toes. If you want a challenge, you can see if you can set down each toe one at a time. It's really hard, I can't do it. But press your toes firmly into the mat. And at the same time that you feel rooted into the ground and you're sending energy down through your feet, you're also sending energy up through the crown of your head. And inhale your arms up overhead for extended mountain pose. And exhale, forward fold. Your hands can come through heart center. Inhale to a halfway lift. Your hands can come to your shins or your thighs. Squeeze your shoulder blades together and away from the ears. And you're kind of making the shape of a number 7 with your body. Exhale, forward fold. Plant your hands on the mat. Step one foot back, and then the other foot, you're coming into a high plank. You can hinge backward and forward through the ankles and the shoulders to warm things up. Hinge forward so that your shoulders are over your wrists and squeeze your elbows into your rib cage as you lower down. We're coming all the way down, belly to the mat, and release the tops of your feet to the mat with little or no weight in the hands. Inhale, peel your chest up off the mat for low cobra. Exhale, release everything down, release your cheek to the mat. Take a breath here. And then inhale your chest up once again. Exhale, release the other cheek to the mat. And then inhale one more time. We're going to come up to Sphinx pose. So this time your forearms come to the mat and your shoulders are back away from the ears. Your elbows can be far away from your body or they can be right up under your shoulders, depending on how this back bend feels for you. You don't want to feel it in the low back because that can get very sore. So if you are feeling it there, if it's too crunched up, go ahead and move your elbows farther away from you. And then focus on the idea of pulling your heart forward so that you're actually lengthening your spine a little bit in this back bend. And that you're also opening the front of the body. If you are a person who holds a lot of tension in your stomach, if you get stomach aches when you're stressed or nervous, or you just hold tension there, you may feel a lot of sensation in this pose. From your Sphinx pose, if your elbows are not all the way under your shoulders, scooch them in so that you can bring your hands up under your shoulders, tuck your toes, and you're going to push yourself back to tabletop. So onto your hands and your knees. And then move what needs to move. And we'll come up into a downward facing dog once again. So tuck your toes, lift your knees, lift your hips. You might need to pedal out this down dog a little bit too, if your hamstrings are still tight. Fully extend through your arms, lift your tailbone. And we're gonna come into a lunge. So lift your right leg up behind you, kick it out straight, and then lunge it through. Kind of swing it between your feet, between your hands, rather. Scoot it forward. And then surf out your lunge a little bit, hinging back and forth, warming up your hips. You're going to take a little runner's lunge so you can set your back knee down on the mat and toe heel your right foot up to the upper right hand corner of your mat. And both hands come to the inside of that front foot. Now you can stay here in your runner's lunge. You can come down to your forearms. You can use a block or a stack of books or canned soup, whatever you got laying around, to come down to the right level for you. You can keep this foot on the mat, or you can come out to the knife edge of the foot and bring the knee out so that it's more of a hip opener, if that's what you'd like. As long as the knee stays in line with the ankle, you're keeping those joints safe. Find whichever version of this pose serves you. Start to bring that foot back to center. If you're on your forearms, bring your hands under your shoulders to press yourself up. If you have props you're using, set them aside. Toe heel that right foot back to center. And then you can take a little half saddle here. So you can shift your weight back over your back leg, flex the foot, straighten the leg. So you can stay lifted like this, especially if you're getting a good hamstring stretch, or you can sit all the way back on the back leg, if that feels okay. So again, this is a matter of finding the one that works for you, that does something for you. And you can even go back and forth between this lunge, stretching out the quad and the back leg, to the hamstring in the front leg. Some people like to make this a little bit more fluid, a little more active. And then bend the front knee, come back to your lunge, hands come back to the mat. Send the front foot back, and you could take some hip circles here if you want. Stretch out the leg behind you. Whatever movement feels really good. Before you come back to your tabletop. From your tabletop, lunge your left leg between your hands. Maybe surf it out a little bit here first. Before you toe heel that left foot up into the corner of your mat, make whatever adjustments you need to your back leg. Both hands come to the inside of your front foot, and then you decide from here how far you want to go. You can stay here, you can come to forearms, use some props. If you want more of a hip opener, you can drop that knee and ankle over to the side. Now, you might need a little bit more time on this side. You might need a little bit less time. So you decide if you're ready to shift out of this pose or if you want to stay for a little bit longer, because you do have the time if you want to stay here. If you're choosing to move out of your runner's lunge at this time, bring your hands under your shoulders, press yourself up, press your weight back into your right leg behind you. Start to toe heel that left foot back to center. And then if you'd like to, you can straighten the front knee, flex the foot. You got the same options on this side. Our two sides are not usually perfectly symmetrical, so what felt good on the right side might not necessarily feel good on the left side. So find out what feels good for you here. You can sit all the way back on your right foot. You can stay lifted. And you can hinge back and forth between your lunge and your hamstring stretch. And then bend that front knee one final time. Bring your hands down to the mat. Send the front foot back. Stretch it out. Maybe make some hip circles. And then we'll meet in a child's pose. So from your tabletop, bring your knees wide, toes together. Reach your arms forward. And this is a good time to get some water or to reconnect with your breath. And from child's pose, we'll come up into a downward facing dog once again. So bring your knees hip width apart, tuck your toes, lift your knees and your hips, press your heart towards your thighs. Inhale your right leg up behind you, nice and strong. Exhale, lunge it through. We're gonna come up to a warrior one. So your back foot can stay at a 45-degree angle. And as you get your balance, lift yourself up. Both hips are facing the front of the mat, so the hips are squared still. Arms come up overhead and lunge in the front leg. Your back leg is staying straight and strong. And from your warrior one, we'll take a humble warrior. So bring your hands behind you, interlace your fingers, and draw your shoulders down, opening up through the chest. Maybe take a little bit of a mini back bend here. And then leading with your heart, lean forward over your leg. Maybe your interlaced hands start to come up behind you. But go with a flat back until you can't go any farther. And then you can stay here, continuing to open the chest, open the shoulders, or you can release your hands down to the mat and let your chest come to meet your thigh if that feels good. This is another good place for blocks if you like your fingertips to touch something solid and they're not on the mat. If your hands are on the mat, interlace the fingers behind you. Let those hands pull you back up to standing. And then straighten the front leg. We're going to come to a wide-legged forward fold from here. So I'll switch around just so that you can see. So you've straightened your front leg. Pivot your front foot to the side so it's parallel to the short edge of the mat. Pivot your other foot so it's the same. You can widen out your stance a little if you want to. Place your hands on your hips. Lead with your heart. Once you can't go with a flat back anymore, you can release your hands down to the mat, or you can bring them to your ankles. And I would recommend keeping a little bit of a micro bend in the knees so that they're not locked. And you can fully collapse and fold forward here. To bring yourself out of your wide-legged forward fold, Press weight into your fingertips. Walk your fingertips back so that they're in line with your feet. Then place one hand and then the other on your hips with a flat back. Come up to standing. And we're going to take our humble warrior on the other side. So rotate your other foot towards what was the back of your mat. It's going to be the front of your mat for a second. And your other foot at a 45-degree angle. So this should be your left foot in front. I'm backwards because I switched so that you could see me. But left foot should be forward. Bend your front knee after you make sure that your hips are squared to the front of the mat. Interlace your fingers behind you. Draw your shoulders down and back. Maybe go for a little mini back bend if that feels good, only if it feels good. And then making sure that front knee is bent, start to lead with your heart, reaching over that front leg. Hands come up behind you, opening the chest, opening the shoulders. And again, you can stay here or you can release your hands down to the mat, whichever you prefer. I will switch sides so that I'm getting my left leg too. If your hands are down on the mat, interlace them behind you. Use your hands to pull yourself up back to a warrior one. Straighten the front leg. Once again, pivot both of your feet so that they're parallel to the short edge of the mat. Reach both arms up and out to the side so you're coming into a 5-pointed star. Reach everything strong in every direction. And then pivot back so that you're facing the front of your mat again. Should be your left foot. Nope. Whichever foot is forward, bend it. Bring both hands down to the mat. Send your front foot back. And then you can set your knees gently down on the mat. We're going to work our way from tabletop here to a seated position. So you can swing your legs out in front of you or whatever your favorite way to get down on the ground is. And we'll take a cobbler's pose here. So bring the soles of your feet together. And you can decide how close you want your heels to your body. Having your heels farther away from your body doesn't necessarily make it easier. It may bring the sensation to a different part of your inner thighs or your legs. And let the weight of your legs bring that hip opening. There's not a need to press down on your knees or have them meet the ground. In fact, if you want to, you can place props, blocks, blankets, pillows, whatever you've got around you. You can place those under your knees. And you can stay here. If you choose to fold forward, hinge from your hips, lead with your heart. When you can't go with a flat back any longer, then you can release your head and neck and allow your spine to round. When you stay in a long yoga pose hold, your muscles will stop protecting your joints since they recognize they're not moving, there's not a risk of injury. So when you do move out of this pose, it took you a long time to get in, so take a long time to get out so that you're not causing injury. Walk your fingertips back towards your body until you're back in a seated position. Use your hands to bring your knees together and slide them out in front of you. Bring a little bit of movement back into the legs. Maybe you want to windshield wiper your feet back and forth or jiggle them out a little bit. And so you're re-engaging those muscles. And we'll move into our final Shavasana. So you can come onto your back and take Shavasana in a traditional corpse pose with your legs straight out in front of you, hands relaxed down by your sides. If your low back troubles you here, you can bend your knees, plant your feet on the mat, let your knees knock together. And you always have the option to rest your hands on your belly, a hand on your belly, a hand on your chest. You can get cozy with blankets or a hoodie so that you can stay here for a while. And this is your time to rest, which is very important. This is your time to thank your body for the hard work that it does for you. It's your chance for your yoga practice to set in and sink in. So don't cheat yourself out of this time. Take the time. And I'll close class here so that you can spend as long as you want to in Shavasana, but there's 5 minutes left in this hour block of time. I encourage you to stay in Shavasana as long as you possibly can. And let your limbs become heavy. And let any leftover tension melt away. I want to thank you so much for doing yoga with me, for sharing your practice, for coming to your mat and making that choice. And I hope to see you in the studio or online soon. Namaste.